My church experience is very interesting. I had an aunt that lived in the house that we lived in, so she took us to church, and I don't know if this generation is into this, but the church she took us to was kind of bougie. They were teachers. In the 50s, those were big shots, and so they sang anthems at church. And so my mother wouldn't go, but she sent my sister and me to that church, and it was a good experience. The people there loved us, of course. Now that was a time when class was a little bit obvious because the people whose children were attending the church, they were sometimes treated a little different than my sister and me. We were the little poor kids who were participating, but people loved us, and we did have opportunities to go to conventions and things like that. Well, my dad went to another church, and his church was the kind of church that the deacons have a little chair and a little cushion, and they go and get down on their knees and pray, and the preachers hoop and holler and put their hands in their ear. Our pastor didn't do that. He was educated. He had gone to seminary. So these were two experiences that we went to. And then on Sunday night, my aunt took us to the Holiness Church, where everybody spoke in tongues and danced, and we'd be dancing. And I was a little terrible then. So now, being a minister, it has just been so interesting to me, because it doesn't matter if it's a little bitty church, I'm fine. If they're speaking in tongues, I'm fine. If they bougie, then I just sing the anthems too. So I'm very grateful for my religious experience. And then my mother, she didn't go to church at all for a while. My mom was just a little radical too. And so she decided to go to church, and she went to another church. I said, we got 4 people in our family, and we got 3 churches. This makes no sense at all, but that was it.
So do you think because you were poor, did the community itself and the church help each other?
I don't ever remember our church that I grew up in doing the kind of things that our church that my husband has pastored did. Like earthquake, we're sending money there. Earthquake, the pastor's going there. We never did that. And another thing was, they never taught tithes and offering. I mean, in our bougie church, we came and gave $1 every Sunday. We didn't know the value of tithing and offering. So, even though it was good, there's still more things to be learned and more things to be learned.
Now, you decided that you wanted to go to college, right?
Well, every day and night, my mother said, get a good education. Get a good education. And I don't know who will see this eventually, but she said, so you don't have to be beholden to no nigger man. So it was very important that we get education. But when I was 16 and I worked my first summer job, I bought my mom a typewriter. I said, go to school, learn how to type, get yourself a good job. Because there was always tension in my family. Once when I was 11, my dad told me that he only married my mom because she was pregnant. He didn't marry her because he loved her. And of course, a little radical that I am, I told him, well, if you didn't love her, you didn't have no business having sex with them. But anyway, she did not have the nerve to, she just wouldn't go. She didn't have the courage to jump on out there and
You think some of that lack of courage was because of Jim Crow and the oppression?
I don't know. I watched my family, because our mother and fathers would have fist fights, and the tension. And so sometimes I thought her grandmother must have spoiled her and let her have her way all the time because her mother had died. But then now, as I see grandparents who are stuck with grandkids all the time, So maybe her grandmother didn't like that. Maybe her grandmother, you know, kind of resented having to be stuck with raising this child. And so maybe she didn't get the love. Maybe she didn't get the nurturing and the encouragement that would have given her the strength to step up and go learn on the typewriter.
Yeah.
But
you found the strength. So let's talk about you going to college. What was that like?
Well, being the first one in my family, I think I might have had a couple of cousins who had gone to college. Nobody had ever gone to college in my family. And because my mother drilled in our heads, get an education, so you got to go to college. And I was thinking the other day, my tuition at Clark College in 1961 was $250 a semester. But that was probably the same for my dad as our older daughter going to Johns Hopkins, and hers was like about $16,000 a year. So, so I went to Clark, but I guess I wasn't prepared for that. You know, I didn't have the clothes, I didn't have the cars. You know, I think about that time because in our house where we had 2 rooms, a person in the room next to us moved out. So they cut a hole, and so then my sister and I had a room. And then they took a little part of the hallway, and we had our own bathroom. So by that time, I had a little more space, but I really didn't have a place to study. And my parents couldn't say, girl, you better get your lesson, you know. And so after 2 years, I flunked out of college. And so, but while I was there, and they were doing the demonstrations, and they were coming by getting people to go and demonstrate, I thought, I don't think I can let somebody spit on me or hit me. I would hit them back, and I would be an embarrassment to Dr. King and the movement. So I opted to stay in school when I saw my classmates going to demonstrate. So after I dropped out, as a result probably of the demonstrations, the telephone company had to integrate. And so what they did was they came to the black college and they looked for people who had dropped out. They didn't want college graduates because they would have to make them managers. But they wanted college dropouts. So I went to work for the telephone company, integrating the telephone company. I started in 1963. And so what they did was they put 2 of us in the office, and we worked side by side with white high school graduates. We were clerks. I guess there might have been some other African Americans that were operators, but I had not heard of that. So I thought I was a part of the first group. And so that was quite a challenge. But, you know, we went to work there. They didn't want us there. And we didn't care that they didn't want us there. We felt we had a right. We had one black, well, then we had the little telephone that stood up on a thing you put up to your ear. But we had a phone. We paid bills, so we had a right to work at that company. And so we worked. So we had a couple of little spats, like the white ladies would just sit and talk and let us do, we had to answer phones. And we had to keep track of the phones we had answered. And they just sit over and talk and just let us work. So got one that was a little radical like me. So I said, hey, I got about 20 of these on my page. How many you got? She said, I got 20. So I ain't answering no more phones till they answer some. So we went on back and we was acting like we were doing something. We went and answered the phone. So then the supervisor goes, why is nobody answering the phone in here? I said, hey, let's see how many everybody got. I got 20. She said, I got 20. And they didn't have any. You know, but we were following, no, y'all got to answer the phone something. So we stood right up for ourselves. But I found it to be much more fair than what I found when I came here. But I remember the day that President Kennedy was shot. We were at work that day. And it was like, we worked with engineers, a group of, and there must have been about 20 men. And what they did was they did the wiring when buildings were being built and where they was going to put the telephones in the building. So what they would do is they would have us bring them prints of the drawings. And there must have been, I guess, about 30 of them in there. But we heard them. They was just cheering. So what's going on? What's going on? And so our supervisor, a white lady, she came in and she said, President Kennedy's been killed. And then she went in the bathroom and she was crying in the bathroom. So even though that was that resentment and hatred, God put somebody there, who was nice. So we had started work like in September. And so December, and the black lady and I, we always went out for lunch. Actually, my husband thinks I like to work so we can have money, and I like to work so I can get up and get dressed up every day and go out to lunch. And so we went out to lunch every day. So our supervisor told us, she said, well, the office is going to have a Christmas party, but they don't want you guys to participate in the Christmas party. So you can take, you can stay out 2 hours. And so, our feelings hurt a little bit, but, so be it. We out shopping and we eating and so. So then when I came here and went on, but also I need to stay there, when we applied for jobs, we were more qualified because we were working side by side with high school graduates. So when you apply for a job, they gave you the job. So, and actually I worked for a telephone company for 9 years. We had a son who died when he was 8 months old. And so then when we had our baby, I was kind of crazy a little bit. I decided I wasn't going to go back to work. And my husband said, when are you going back to work? I said, I'm not going back to work. He said, we just got a 1969 Grand Prix, and I can't pay for that with my salary. I said, well, we better get rid of it because I'm not leaving my baby. And so we got rid of the car. That meant we had one car, so I had to take him to work. And if I had to, that was all right. I stayed home for 7 years with her. And so then my husband went to, no, because my husband was in Vietnam before.